Rain pounded against the windows of the Cole mansion like 1,000 impatient fists. Inside, the grand chandelier flickered as Ethan Cole slammed his glass of whiskey onto the marble counter, frustration spilling over with the amber liquid. His assistant stood frozen near the door, holding a folder. "Sir, the charity board meeting." "Cancel it?" Ethan barked, not even turning. "They'll survive one night without me." He was the kind of man used to being obeyed, used to power bending the world around him.
Billionaire, investor, media darling.
Yet under that sharp suit and polished shoes was a hollow man who couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed for real. The only sounds in the mansion were the echo of rain, the hum of wealth, and the faint clinking of dishes from the kitchen downstairs. His maid, Rosa, still working late again. She was quiet, efficient, invisible. But tonight, she wasn't alone. A small voice floated up from the kitchen. "Mom, can I light the candle now?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "A child?" He stepped closer to the stairwell, curiosity tugging against his usual detachment. Down in the warm glow of the kitchen, Rosa's daughter, Lila, stood on a stool with a little cake. Uneven, homemade, one candle melting faster than it should.
Rosa smiled weakly.
"We can't afford candles every time, sweetheart." "But it's your birthday," Lila said, eyes bright. "You deserve one wish at least." Ethan lingered in the shadows, unseen, listening. Rosa hesitated, closed her eyes, and blew out the flame. The tiny puff of smoke rose toward him like a whisper from another world. The next morning, Rosa arrived early as always. Ethan was already in the dining room, coffee untouched. When she greeted him, he nodded briefly, then noticed Lila standing shyly by the door, clutching a small backpack. "Why is she here?" he asked flatly. Rosa lowered her gaze. "Her school's closed today, sir. I couldn't find anyone to watch her." He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Fine. Just keep her out of trouble." For the first few hours, she did exactly that. But around noon, while Rosa cleaned upstairs, Ethan caught the sound of giggles near his office. He opened the door, and there was Lila, drawing something on his expensive tablet. He almost lost it. "Do you have any idea how much that costs?" he snapped. Lila jumped, eyes wide, the pen trembling in her hand. I'm sorry, sir. I just wanted to draw you." "Draw me?" She nodded, showing him the screen. It was rough, childish. But there he was, standing tall with a sad face, and beside him was a smiling little girl holding a balloon. "Why am I sad?" he asked despite himself. "Because you don't have anyone to play with," she said simply. Something in Ethan's chest cracked a little. He took a deep breath, then surprised even himself by kneeling. "All right, little artist, let's make a deal. Since you like wishes so much, how about I grant you 3? Anything you want." Her eyes widened. "Anything? Anything?" He smirked. "I'm a billionaire, remember?" She thought hard, lips pursed, gaze shifting toward the hallway where her mother worked tirelessly. Then, with a small voice that carried more weight than any demand he'd ever heard, she said, "I wish my mom could rest." Ethan froze. He had expected her to ask for toys, candy, maybe a pony. Not that. Not something so pure. Rosa appeared in the doorway, flustered. "Lila, don't bother Mr. Cole." But Ethan raised a hand.
"No, Rosa."
She made her first wish. His voice had softened, the edge gone. "And I intend to grant it." That afternoon he called his estate manager. Rosa was reassigned, not fired, but promoted. A new position, better pay, weekends off. Rosa was speechless. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he replied. "Just rest." That night, Ethan sat alone in his study, replaying Lila's words. "I wish my mom could rest." Simple, honest. And for the first time in years, the silence in his mansion didn't feel comfortable. It felt empty. The next morning, he found Lila in the garden, crouched beside a fountain, feeding crumbs to the birds. "Morning, kid," he said awkwardly. She looked up, beaming. "Did my wish work?" He smiled faintly. "It did." Your mom's got time off now. She clapped her hands in delight. Then I have 2 wishes left. Ethan chuckled. Careful what you wish for. As days passed, the mansion began to change. Lila's laughter filled rooms that had known only silence. Ethan found himself lingering near the kitchen just to listen. Rosa, though cautious, couldn't deny the shift in her employer's mood. He wasn't barking orders anymore. Sometimes he even smiled. One evening, Lila came running to Ethan's office out of breath. Mr. Cole, I'm ready for my second wish. He closed his laptop, amused. All right, let's hear it. I wish you'd have dinner with us tonight. He blinked. Dinner? With you too. She nodded eagerly. You always eat alone. That's sad. Rosa immediately protested. Lila, don't. But Ethan interrupted, a half-smile tugging at his lips.
No, Rosa.
The Lady of Wishes has spoken. That evening, the dining table, usually set for 1, had 3 plates. Lila chattered about school, about how she wanted to be an artist, about how her mom made the best soup in the world. Ethan found himself laughing, actually laughing. Startled him. Rosa glanced up, eyes softening as she saw a side of him no one else had. After dinner, as Lila fell asleep on the couch, Ethan and Rosa lingered in the quiet. You've got quite the daughter, he said. She's all I have, Rosa replied, her voice thick. Her father died when she was 3. Since then, it's just been us. Ethan looked at the sleeping child, then back at her mother. You've done well, Rosa. She's extraordinary. For a long moment, silence filled the space. Comfortable this time. Something unspoken passed between them. As the weeks rolled on, things changed further. Ethan started joining them for breakfast. He even let Lila redecorate one of the guest rooms into her art studio. The cold, echoing mansion began to feel alive again. But one morning, Lila didn't come downstairs. Rosa rushed to her room. She was burning with fever. Panic spread through the house. Ethan called the doctor himself, pacing the floor. Hours passed. The fever broke, but Lila remained weak. Rosa sat by her bedside, holding her hand. Ethan hovered near the door, feeling useless. When Lila finally opened her eyes, she smiled faintly. Hey, Mr. Cole. He knelt beside her. Hey, kid. You scared us. Sorry, she whispered. Guess I'll save my last wish for later. He forced a smile, but inside, fear clawed at him. He hadn't realized until that moment how much that little girl had come to mean to him. How she had quietly filled the emptiness in his life. That night, he couldn't sleep. The storm had returned, lightning slicing across the sky just like the night he'd first heard her laugh downstairs. He stood by his window, rain splattering against the glass, thinking of all the things his money couldn't fix. Loneliness, regret, or the fragile heartbeat of a child who had changed everything. When morning came, Lila was stronger, sitting up and sketching again. She grinned when she saw him. See? I'm not done yet. Ethan chuckled, relief washing over him. You're tougher than I thought. She tilted her head, studying him seriously. You know, Mr. Cole, you smile more now. He blinked.
Doi.
Yeah, that's good. Smiling makes your heart lighter. He didn't know how to reply to that, so he just nodded, feeling that small, unexplainable warmth spreading again. The kind that no fortune could ever buy. Days turned into weeks, and Lila's health returned. But something deeper had changed inside Ethan. He still ran his empire, still attended meetings and signed million-dollar deals, but his mind always drifted back home, to the laughter in his kitchen, to the way Rosa hummed softly while cooking, to the little paint smudges on the marble floor that Lila never quite managed to clean up. One afternoon, as he came home early, he found Lila sitting on the grand staircase, sketching in her notepad. She looked up and grinned. You're home before dark. Did the big business people give you a break? He smirked, loosening his tie. Something like that. She tilted her head. Are you rich because you love your work? The question caught him off guard. I guess I was, he admitted. But lately, I think I'm rich because of who I come home to. Lila's smile deepened. That sounds like a wish coming true already. He raised an eyebrow. Speaking of which, you still have one wish left, don't you? She nodded, her eyes sparkling. I've been saving it for the perfect time. Ethan laughed. You're quite the strategist. I learned from the best, she said, giggling. That night, the three of them had dinner again. Rosa had cooked a special meal, Ethan's favorite, though she didn't know it. He watched her from across the table, noticing details he'd ignored before. The faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her hair framed her face when she smiled, the quiet strength in her voice when she spoke about Lila's dreams. For the first time, Ethan realized he didn't just care for the girl. He cared for her mother too. But that terrified him. Feelings were unpredictable, messy. Business was easier. Numbers didn't make your chest tighten when someone laughed. After dinner, Rosa cleared the table while Lila stayed up drawing. Ethan lingered near the kitchen door. Rosa, he said quietly. She turned, surprised. Yes, sir? He hesitated. You don't have to call me that anymore. Her brow furrowed. What should I call you then? He smiled faintly. Ethan. She nodded slowly. All right, Ethan. Something in the way she said his name made him feel more human than he had in years. Later that night, Ethan walked past Lila's room. The door was ajar, and her soft humming drifted out. He peeked in. She was drawing again. On the paper was a picture of him, Rosa, and herself sitting under a tree. Above them, the words, my family. He froze. His throat tightened. Quietly, he stepped back and closed the door. The next morning was bright and clear. For the first time in months, the mansion felt alive with morning sun. Rosa was in the garden trimming roses, and Lila was chasing butterflies with a net that was far too big for her small hands. Ethan watched from the balcony, a rare, genuine smile playing at his lips. But then his phone buzzed, a call from his business partner. An emergency meeting, a merger falling apart, billions on the line. Ethan glanced back at the garden.
Rosa waved, Lila laughed.
He hesitated, then turned and walked back inside. Hours later, the meeting turned into chaos. Investors shouting, deals unraveling. Ethan's jaw clenched. He'd worked his entire life to control everything. And now, for the first time, he didn't care if it all fell apart. Because his mind was still in that garden. He ended the meeting abruptly, much to everyone's shock. Handle it without me, he said, grabbing his coat. I have something more important to do. By the time he got back home, the sky was turning orange. Rosa met him at the door, worried. Is everything all right? He looked at her and smiled. It is now. That evening, they all sat on the patio as the sun dipped behind the hills. Lila leaned against her mom's arm, yawning. Mr. Cole, she murmured. I think I'm ready for my last wish. Ethan turned to her, curious. You sure? Once you use it, that's it. She nodded solemnly. I've been thinking about it for a long time.
Rosa smiled gently.
What's it going to be this time, sweetheart? Another dinner? A trip? Lila shook her head.
No.
I wish. She looked straight at Ethan, eyes shining. I wish you could find someone who loves you for you, not for your money. Silence fell. Even the evening breeze seemed to pause. Ethan stared at her, speechless. Rosa's eyes widened, then softened with emotion. Lila? Ethan said slowly, his voice breaking. Why would you wish that for me? She smiled. Because you gave my mom rest and you gave me family. But you're still lonely sometimes. I can see it when you think no one's looking. He blinked rapidly, unable to find words. Rosa reached for her daughter's hand, tears glistening in her eyes. Ethan finally managed to whisper, That's quite a wish. Lila shrugged. It's the best one I've got. The next moment, she yawned again, curling up against her mother. Within minutes, she was asleep. The sun had vanished completely, leaving behind only the glow of lanterns and the sound of crickets. Ethan sat there in silence, watching Rosa stroke Lila's hair. Then, softly, Rosa spoke. She's always been like that, thinking of everyone else first. He nodded, his gaze distant. She's remarkable, just like her mother. Rosa looked up, their eyes meeting. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt charged, delicate, uncertain, but real. "You've changed, Ethan," she said quietly. "You're not the same man I started working for." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I finally learned what really matters." From that evening on, the three of them became inseparable. Lila recovered fully, her laughter now the heartbeat of the mansion. Ethan began to step away from endless boardrooms and charity galas, choosing instead to spend time with them. Painting lessons, movie nights, garden picnics. The empire he had built no longer defined him. Love did. Months later, as Christmas approached, Ethan gathered them in the living room. Snow drifted outside, dusting the windows in silver. "All right, young lady," he said, handing Lila a small wrapped box. "You've used all your wishes, but Santa still owes you one." She tore it open eagerly, a sketchbook with her name engraved in gold. Inside, on the first page, Ethan had written, "For the girl who taught me that wishes can change hearts." Lila squealed and hugged him. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." He smiled, glancing at Rosa, whose eyes shimmered with tears. "Call me Ethan," he said softly. The night stretched on with laughter, warmth, and the glow of the fire. When Lila finally went to bed, Ethan and Rosa stood by the window, watching snow fall in silence. "She really changed you," Rosa said. He looked at her, then gently took her hand. "No," he murmured. "You both did." Rosa didn't pull away. The firelight flickered between them, soft and golden. Outside, the world was cold and vast. But inside, for the first time in his life, Ethan felt whole. Years later, that same mansion would no longer be silent and sterile. Its halls would echo with laughter, children's footsteps, and the sound of music. Visitors would whisper stories about the once-cold billionaire who found his heart because of a little girl and her 3 wishes. And if you listened closely, you could almost hear her voice echo through time. "Kindness is the only wish that never runs out."